All right. Well, hello again to everyone, and especially those of you who just joined. My name is Alex Mitchell, and I'm a marketing communications manager for the Lighthouse Lab Services team. And if you're here today for the webinar on mastering turnaround times and process optimization in your laboratory, you're in the right spot. Very happy to welcome our guests today. First, we have Jared Stanger, CEO and founder of Magnified Learning. Jared has a very extensive background of nearly 2 decades of experience working in and improving the healthcare industry. With more than $1 billion in value transformation savings across his portfolio, Jared now spends his time driving innovation for healthcare organizations by sharing his knowledge and expertise in the healthcare transformation. Jared is the author of Cohesive Value Transformation and founder of the Magnified Group in Magnified Learning. He uses cohesive value transformation to reimagine Lean Six Sigma education and transformation for healthcare professionals at all levels of the organization. His experience spans across large to small healthcare systems, academic, pediatric, behavioral, community, VA hospitals, and critical access healthcare facilities, large and small physician practices, long-term care facilities, and major insurance payers as well. Jared has a Master's of Health Administration from Penn State University and a Bachelor of Science from Brigham Young University, Idaho, in Health and Healthcare Administration and Management. He is a certified Master Black Belt in Lean Six Sigma, Project Manager, and Change Leader. So we're very happy to have him today sharing his expertise. And alongside him at the end, we also will have Joe Kessler, our Director of Recruiting and Staffing Services, pitch a new talent on demand offering that we feel might be of interest to a lot of the lab professionals on the call today. Hopefully something that could provide some new opportunities for you down the line. Before I turn things over to Jared and we get started here, we're just going to touch on a few housekeeping items. If you're having any lag or experiencing any difficulty hearing us today, close any apps you might have running in the background to improve your performance. This webinar is going to be recorded. That's always a popular question. It's going to go out when it's available, done processing, likely tomorrow morning, directly to the email address that you registered under. So no need to ask us for that. That's going to go out to you. If you'd like to download today's slides, those are available under the handouts section. And we also have a few other PDFs that will tell you a bit more about Magnified Learning, great white paper they have on offer there, and a little bit more about Lighthouse in case you're interested in any of our recruiting services. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, go ahead and feel free to drop those right in the Q&A box. We'll monitor those as the presentation's going on, respond to any live if we have the availability to do so, and if not, there'll be a Q&A portion at the end. And we also have a poll for you today that we'll be running during the event. That's totally optional, so feel free to respond to it if you have input and exit out if you don't, and just move on with the presentation. Now, really quickly, I want to tell you just a bit about Lighthouse Recruiting. Of course, we offer a host of laboratory services, and that's how we're able to keep these events free. But our recruiting team particularly specializes exclusively in the medical lab industry, and we fill permanent and travel positions for all roles and levels in labs across the country. We have industry-leading retention, and we're typically our clients' first and last choice to assist in finding their great employees. And one of the best things about our service is we offer risk-free recruiting and staffing with a 90-day guarantee on any candidates we place. So please, if you're a candidate, we offer candidate services to help them find great roles. If you're an employer or a lab owner and you're seeking to boost your recruiting efforts, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to chat with you. Under the handout section, you can see offers. There's opportunities to follow up with both us and Magnified Learning. We'll flash those across your screen at various points throughout this presentation as well if you'd like to follow up. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jared.
All right. Well, thanks, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope everyone can hear me okay. If you can't, type something in the chat so I can fix something on my end. But it is an honor to be here. I'm happy to be collaborating with Lighthouse right now and sharing with you what I know about turnaround time, especially and specifically for the lab business, both in clinical and the anatomical pathology business. What I'm really excited about here and I hope everyone can align with this, is we're really here because we need change. We want change and we want improvement. And so I'm going to share with you a lot about the change and improvement for the lab in healthcare. We're going to talk about the key bottlenecks that relate to harming, I'm going to use that word, harming turnaround time and meeting our customers' expectations. And we're going to learn about a new approach that is desperately needed in healthcare so that we can accomplish the goals that we need to. Because there's a lot working against us, especially in the lab. Things are getting more and more complex, and we've got to find a way to balance innovation with what our culture needs and what our people need. And then we're going to wrap things up with relating this back to you as an individual and what I have learned in teaching, training, certifying, as well as helping individuals accomplish their goals. So, in other words, what's going to happen when we solve these problems, these complicated problems that have maybe never been solved before? And how is it going to impact your career? Now, the purpose of today isn't necessarily to go into the roadmap of turnaround time. So I'll let you all study this outside of this webinar, but I want to highlight the 5 areas of turnaround time. It always starts with expectations. We have to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we have to get that from the customer, whether that's a patient, a physician, a health system, government, whomever it might be. And from that expectation, we can then move into those customer requirements, which allow us to define turnaround time rules. What is it that they need us to accomplish? And can we accomplish it? Now, from those requirements, we can then build what's called an MSA, or a measurement system analysis. And in the MSA, this is where we are building the ability to document and track the data. This is a huge component to being able to trust the information we have, make sure it's reliable, and that it meets all of the measurement criteria for trust. Trust that we can understand and interpret it, and that we can communicate back to the customer that this is really what's happening. Now, once we have certified that everything we're getting is compliant with accuracy and precision, we can then move into the 4th, which is the process management. How are we going to accomplish the goal? What are the processes? And because we're tracking it, we can start to identify waste in our practice, as well as controlling outcomes and meeting those targets. And then one of the most important things that the lab needs to do is then communicate regularly and effectively what the outcomes were. We don't want people calling the lab and saying, hey, how's it going? Where's my specimen? They should know. And they should know regularly how things are going. Okay? That's all the stakeholder management practices. So these are the 5 different areas or process steps in how we measure and assess turnaround time. And what you can do outside of this webinar is you can use this as your own framework to kind of assess how your turnaround time metrics are going. And if they're not going well, or maybe they're not meeting your comfort level, well, then use this as kind of a check list or a framework to go back and audit what you're doing. Now, here's the first question. This is more just a warm up, but I want you to think about which phase from when we order a test to when we finally get to communicate those results back to the patient or the customer. So there's all these different components in how we go from A to Z, right? And which of these areas do you think has the most risk for constraints? Constraints meaning this is the area that's slowing us down the most. Now, the lab has a lot of different touch points, does it not? We do a lot of things in the lab, and there's a lot of activities happening outside of the lab to get the specimen to us. And then there continues to be activities after we get the results back to the patient and how things are going. And so the answer to that question is really the phase or the area where we have the most cross-functional human interaction. And what I mean by that is as you look at the pre-analytic phase and the analytic phase and the post-analytic phase, we're in a world where there's a lot of crossover. In order for us to truly impact turnaround time, we have to understand all parties that are involved in getting the orders placed, collecting that specimen, getting it to the lab, receiving it in the lab, and then going through the entire analytic phase of getting to that result and then reporting it out. And so as you think about your own unique processes, whether we're in clinical pathology or anatomic pathology, how many people are touching that specimen, and how many of those people don't in fact report to the lab or report to different functioning units? So it can be quite complicated. And we're going to do a poll real fast, but I want to walk through this quickly. Now, in each of these phases, we have on the slide, let me get out. Do I have a pointer? I don't have a pointer. Okay, I'm going to try to draw. So we have over here the swim lane diagram, each of the areas where the lab is going to interact with at some point or rely on each of these areas to get the job done. And then we have all of our phases up top here as to what's going on with the specimen to get to that result. And don't pay attention necessarily to the little boxes in the process map below, but rather I want to call attention to the 7 practices I've highlighted here that are known bottlenecks in turnaround time. Now, these 7 steps are first with ordering practices, and I label this the stat nightmare because a lot of clients in the past have shared with me the excessive use of stat ordering. And the common theme I hear is that if everything's stat, then nothing is stat, right? But it goes far beyond stat. We have challenges with just ordering the right tests and making sure that we're not ordering excessively. And that moves into our collection practices. Anything from the art of being able to get the specimen to the right container and then get that container or vial or whatever the collection device is to the lab through the courier practice. And then from the courier, making sure we don't lose the specimen, making sure that it gets to the appropriate party, that it's pushed to an individual and received, and then processed in the lab by the appropriate lab personnel that can then take it to the testing practices and then our reporting practices, getting back to the physician. And then the physician has the task, or the appropriate party has the task of communicating those results and interpreting those results back to the patient. So let's do a quick poll. And I want you to go to the poll section and tell us where you think the biggest bottleneck is in your organization. So I'll let you, I think I'm going to look at this off to the right and yep, the poll started. So if you just go to the poll section and click away.
Yep, usually just takes about 10 to 15 seconds for those responses to start filing in. So here they come.
Perfect. Interesting. All right. Yeah, as they come in, I'm seeing a lot of the pre-analytic challenges, and some in testing, some in communication on the back end. Very good. So we'll let those polls, let those results come in just for a second, and then I'll give you a little heads up on the next slide. I'm going to share with you what a study that we did, and we surveyed 65 labs, peer labs, and tried to figure out where the true problems were coming from. So let's go ahead and close that poll. Thank you for those participating. And here's what we found. This was really interesting. 93% of the true problems using data were from the pre-analytic phase. Now, there were problems everywhere, and every organization, every lab, every entity has their own unique challenges. So it's not to say that this is what it's going to be in your lab, but across this study, across the nation, we're having serious problems with the pre-analytic phase, primarily with collections and ordering. So what I'm going to do is walk you through solutions for every area, knowing that the biggest problem is coming out of pre-analytic. So within the pre-analytic phase, we already know, you can Google this, you can research it. There's no mystery at some of the strategies that have been deployed to address ordering, collecting, transportation, and even receipt in the lab. And so I'm going to highlight each of these areas and talk to you about the transformation requirements needed to do something about it. Okay. We know from an ordering perspective that we have challenges with the type of orders being placed. And it's also related to the quality of the test and the sheer volume of the tests that are being ordered inappropriately. We also know from the collection phase and strategies that we really struggle to work together. We struggle to communicate. We struggle to handle the specimen correctly with the right integrity so that it is not compromised before it gets to the lab and does not result in a recollect. We also know there's a large amount of courier abuse in systems, meaning we are overutilizing, overwhelming, and doing probably far too much than what we need to. That keeps our eyes on the ball and our focus and attention on what really needs to get transported at the right time. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then from an arrival perspective, every organization has, unfortunately, some story to tell about lost specimens. And there's nothing worse than losing a tissue sample, ones you can't get back. So we're going to talk about all of that. Now, if we're going to address each of these areas, we really need to talk about what are the criteria to do something about this. Everyone seems to focus solely on innovation. And traditionally, we've always used Lean Six Sigma or some kind of natural instinct that we have to solve problems. And I'm here to tell you, it takes more than a good idea to get the job done. You have to have the acceptance of stakeholders as well. And that acceptance, it requires a high level of emotional intelligence, value alignment, and absolutely requires education, training, and development if you're going to do anything about solving these problems and keeping it sustainable. Let me share with you a new approach to problem solving. Now, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I was in healthcare when healthcare first embraced Lean Six Sigma. So for those of you who don't know, Lean Six Sigma came from the manufacturing industry, is very successful. There are multiple organizations that have used those principles, adapted them to their own business needs. They call it their version, whether that's the Toyota production system, which is the largest car manufacturer in the world now, or GE and Jack Welch's approach to change and change acceptance. Whatever it might be, the principles are the same. And in healthcare, when they first embraced, we should probably try to do this, some of it worked, some of it didn't. And here's why. It's because we're not addressing all of the gaps when it comes to transformation. The transformation gaps are very real. We have opportunities to be innovative and do things we've never done before. And in order to address those gaps, we have to be smart. We have to be creative. We have to have data and be scientists and explore and examine. But at some point, we have to relate the solution back to the values of the people around us. And if our solution does not align with people's values, it's going to fail. And the reason for that is because of the definition of a value. So, value has two different definitions. There's something of worth, meaning if I have a car that's worth something, a certain dollar amount, but it also means one's beliefs. And if my solution conflicts with not only what people see as a value, but also their beliefs, they are going to reject it. And we have to be very careful in how we present solutions and how we design solutions so not to jeopardize the values that people have. And the number one thing that I see when it comes to healthcare problem solving is these technical solutions that are developed, although they will solve a problem, they never address how they're going to improve the value people are going to get from it, as well as how it aligns with why they're there at work in the first place. And so I created this approach called cohesive value transformation that not only teaches us to build the right innovative solution, but also focuses back on stakeholder acceptance in an environment as complicated as healthcare. Now, there was a study by JAMA a few years ago that said we waste almost $1 trillion a year in healthcare. And it accounts for about 30% of what we spend is completely unnecessary. It adds no value at all. So each of you can look at your expense reports right now, and you can go ahead and make the bold assumption that 30% of what you're spending is completely unnecessary. And when you tell yourself that, I want you to think of this as well. Of that 30% that's unnecessary, a little over half of it is because of how you do business. And a little under half of it is how you take care of the patient or the clinical side of healthcare. And now translate that to the lab. How are you doing business in the lab that's driving waste? And from a clinical decision making perspective, how are you not taking care of the patient or in other words, over processing, or what are the clinical practices that you're doing that aren't adding any value to getting the patient better? I got into a little argument with somebody about this that really sparked me to write this white paper. So, about 5 years ago, when I was studying the effects of CVT and that problem solving as compared to Lean Six Sigma, I realized and recognized that the reason why manufacturing fight so hard to say Lean Six Sigma is sufficient for healthcare, they just don't know how to use it, is because they don't understand the complexities of healthcare. And so I went ahead and did my best at trying to visualize how much different we are in healthcare compared to manufacturing. And what I did is I pulled the largest manufacturer in the US, it's in Kentucky, and it's Toyota. And I went through and I looked at, well, how many employees do they have? How many services do they offer? Who's their regulatory oversight? What's their volume output, right? How many things or value are they actually producing and selling? And then I went as far as to say, well, what about the education and the backgrounds and the people and their values? You know, how many different types of specialists are they relying on to actually get the job done? And then I just multiplied all these factors together and came out with a variation ratio. Now, variation in practice means how much leeway do we give our business process in taking in all sorts of different complication and then producing value from it. So, in a perfect world, our input would be the same sick patient every time. right? But that doesn't work, does it? The people who walk in our door, there's so many different types of illnesses, so many different things we can test, so many processes and decisions and algorithms that we use to try to figure out what's going on. And that's very different than taking in a raw good and making a car, especially if it's just 6 to 12 different types of cars. And so here's the result. The amount of variation that manufacturing takes in compared to healthcare is minimal. And for that reason, I mean, you just look at it in Toyota, their variation ratio is 43.6 compared to the largest hospital in America, which is 520. Okay. If Lean Six Sigma was as effective as it claimed it would be back, it would have solved everything about 20 years ago when it was first introduced. And the reason it's not doing that is because of the complexity of healthcare. We can't just put patients on a conveyor belt and send them down the line and expect them to get fixed. So we need a new approach. We need something that does make sense. And I'm not here to really criticize Lean Six Sigma. It works. It works well. I've used it. Okay. But we need something more if we're going to solve these complicated problems. And so, with this value based care approach, the CVT model, we need to develop all talent. That's absolutely unquestioning a need. Everyone needs to be speaking and understanding the same language. And that's going to be very complicated with 100 plus different backgrounds in our hospitals, in our healthcare settings, and how to get the job done. We also need partnership consulting. We need a way to work together, not just within our unit and what we can control, but being able to better partner with others outside of the unit. That would mean the lab having strong relationships with nursing, with the ED, with administration, in a way to where they understand your processes, and if they do something wrong, how it's going to impact turnaround time. And we absolutely need an approach that's more outcome focused versus the traditional DMAIC model, the traditional problem solving model, which is it's very much develop the top talent, focus on the project, focus on the metric, focus on the discipline you're in, and it's more siloed. And because of that, we're going to have limited results. Now, in traditional Lean Six Sigma, we use about 74 tools at our disposal. But what I've found is we really need 91 in healthcare. And you can see that 91 is primarily focused on adding more change leadership, as well as modifying and adding outcome and culture transformation solutions that align all of the different specialties and practices that are in healthcare today so that the lab can finally succeed in areas it's never been able to before. Now, what's the result from doing this? Look, it took me 10 years to get here, but I'm here now. And I want to share with you that first, Lean Six Sigma works, but CVT works better. Here's why. One, when I group projects and problems to solve into 3 different buckets, I have low-hanging fruit, intermediate complexities, and innovation. Low-hanging fruit are problems I can solve on my own. It's within my unit, I have complete control, and I'm going to do it. Versus intermediate, which are problems that take me outside of my control, and it requires me to partner with other organizations, other departments, other peers. And I've got to convince them to work with me and do something different. And then innovative is just simply put, I've never done this before. There is no process for this, and we don't know what we're doing, but we need to do something if we're going to change. And here's what we found with the CVT versus the DMAIC approach. When we do that comparison, and when we're able to transform the culture and empower people and really train our problem solvers to think value alignment, we see a shift in not only the quality of project, meaning we go from low-hanging fruit to more intermediate complexity projects. And that strongly suggests we work better together. And not only do we work better together, but the adjusted average savings between projects is exponentially larger. And why is that? Because if I'm a traditional problem solver and I'm the air quote here savior of the organization in solving this problem, everyone is relying on me to know what to do. Well, what if I change that? What if I have a leader and everyone in that room has enough training and understanding to where they know how to work together and solve problems together? They're going to find more opportunity. The technical solutions are going to be that much better. Okay. So it really does work. This works better than what we've ever done before. I'm living proof of it. So let's go back to our discussion around turnaround time. Now that we know it takes innovation as well as stakeholder acceptance, let me walk you through what I've learned and how we can solve these problems together. And this isn't necessarily to give you, we don't have enough time to talk about every single one. I wish we did, but I want to point you in the right direction. And if you have any questions or need any help or anything, just send me an email, give me a call. Let's work together and let's make healthcare better. When it comes to ordering, if in my organization I'm struggling with ordering practices, I'm struggling with excessive testing, here's what we know. On an innovative transformation side, you've got to simplify communication. That's the number one thing. The reason our physicians are canceling and ordering and reordering again and again and again, or because they're excessively ordering, is because they don't know. They don't know where the specimen is. And in their mind, the expectation is that that result needed to be done. And they don't have a way to communicate other than via stat that this needs to get done right now. And I don't know where we're at. So oftentimes we hear, where are my collectors? Oftentimes we hear complaints about software, the lack of software solutions, having a direct line to call whoever I need to. And to be honest with you, the lab gets blamed a lot for things that are not the lab's fault. But yet you all have the data. And so somehow it's your burden to try to figure out what's actually going on. And that's incredibly unfair. But we have to own it, don't we? Because we've been branded as we should know better. So, how do we fix it? Well, when it comes to the excessive ordering and the communication, we've got to implement the right processes. And when it comes to ordering, we've got to restrict the ordering freedom. Now, how are you going to do that? You can't do that in the lab. You can't tell a doctor how to order or practice medicine. It's not going to work. So we'll talk about how we're going to do that on the stakeholder acceptance side. But we do know what needs to be done. What needs to be done is we need to change the order sets. We need to really question why these tests are included when we draw a rainbow or order a whole series of tests based on the guidelines that have been built in the CPOE, right? The computerized physician ordering order entries. And so we've got to find a way to simplify all of that. Now, from a stakeholder acceptance side, this is the hard part. In order for us to change ordering practices, we're going to have to rely heavily on our physician champion. Organizations who've been able to solve these practices have a physician committee. And in that physician committee, they talk about test utilization and they talk about physician ordering, and they rely heavily on the lab to supply that data. Get your pathologist, find your champion on the inpatient side, and form that committee sooner than later so that you can save not only your patients from excessive testing and draws, but save the organization on unnecessary spending. And there is a large ROI here. So don't underestimate the opportunity that you have. Now, when it comes to collection strategies, I've got a lot to talk about here, but here's what I've found. There is more than one way to skin this cat. There is a debate out there And there's plenty of white papers on should nurses collect, should phlebotomists collect, should it be a hybrid, how do we get it done? Here's the truth. The reason nurses collect versus phlebotomy versus maybe a vendor is because of the unique business needs as well as the culture and what the culture needed at the time. And we live in a world where it's getting even more complicated to find phlebotomists, which means we're going to need help at the bedside in getting these specimens collected. And where we're already struggling and having a hard time finding nurses, it puts even more pressure on us to figure out a way to do this. So let me share a couple of things with you. One, the lab can help collect, nurses can help collect. That's it, bottom line. If you're in an organization where you feel we're going to need some nursing help today or tomorrow or maybe in the future, my counsel to you is to figure out which nursing units or which areas can help you collect those specimens. I have found the ICUs are very open to just collecting all specimens. They're already doing it off the pick lines for certain cases. And they're more, how do I say this? They're more willing because of the complexity of the patient. They're more willing to take on things that just need to get done. Now, next areas are going to be contingent upon who the individuals are. I have found that there's really no correlation with the type of unit outside of the ICU other than who's your better leader who wants to help. And by eliminating some of those collections, you can relieve yourself of that burden of turnaround time. And what we found is that when nurses collect, turnaround time improves. However, specimen integrity issues also increase. Vice versa, we've found that if phlebotomists collect, turnaround time suffers a little, but the quality of collections improves. So pick your poison, okay? And if you want to solve any one of those problems, then you're going to need to attack it using the problem solving techniques that I just spoke about. Now, in order to do any kind of transformation in nursing or in the lab, it's going to require very strong emotional intelligence. There's no way of getting around this. You are going to have to get these people trained, and they need to understand their emotions. They need to understand that there's a better way to do this. What we've what we've found is that the best approach at any change in collection strategy and specimen integrity is you have to outnumber the naysayers. Now, everybody knows who the naysayers, right? They take over the meeting. They don't shut up. They just talk and talk and talk, and they're just negative all the time. You don't want these people in your meeting when you start talking about change. You want to isolate them from everybody. The people you want in your meetings and part of these changes are your role models, people that everyone look up to, and your average personality type, which, according to science and our psychologists at Northwestern University, means that these are the people who are easily persuaded to be either on one side or the other. Okay? And you want your role models to convince your average personality types, which majority of us are average, by the way, to come and embark on this journey. And you want those role models to convince the average that it's a positive experience. And when you start outnumbering that voice, the naysayers get quieter and quieter. So let's talk about courier. Now, courier, well, there's a lot of courier abuse. I've been in organizations where I have saved health systems anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million a year in excessive courier transportation costs. And here's what I've found. You have to track everything. And I mean everything. Who picked up what? Who dropped it off? What were the time stamps? Who ordered it? Who approved it? And what was the type? Are we talking stat versus a rushed versus a scheduled pickup? All of these things add to cost. Now, what makes it even more complicated is some of our couriers are independently owned, meaning they're a separate entity. And if that's the case, it's probably volume based. They don't care. They're not going to care. They're actually going to like when you order them more. They like your inefficiencies, it makes them profitable. So that's going to be a very crucial conversation when you start to call out that courier abuse. But they should be a good partner with you. And so they should be able to communicate with you what they're doing, why they're doing it, and when they're doing it. Now, if you're owned in the courier and it's your own organization, what I found is these individuals, they're very eager to serve. Oh, you need mail picked up? I'll pick that up. I'll pick up your specimens too. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll run around. But as we add more addresses, as we add more things to pick up, sometimes specimens get lost. Sometimes things get misplaced because now we're asking an individual to manage not one process, but multiple processes that can happen at any time and require a different outcome. And it creates this risk for failure. Now, my recommendation is we need a single owner if or a distribution hub, because if every department owns their own courier and they have their own expense item from that and it's not being tracked as a whole, there's a lot of waste. So if you're in an organization where it's fragmented like that, there's an opportunity to save money. Okay? Now, also from a leadership perspective, forgive me, my throat is so dry this morning. From a leadership perspective, if you have a courier transportation that's fragmented, then who is going to help you hold anyone accountable? You have to have a leader who's there to be the one voice of reason for the entire enterprise. So you really do need a strong leader in order to solve those courier abuse situations. Now, when it comes to lost specimens, we really need to focus on a push methodology. In Toyota and in inventory management, we rely on a pull philosophy, which means we pull units of work as we need them. But in healthcare, our mind in this scenario is focused on a push philosophy, which is kind of a hot potato game. I have it, I want to get rid of it as soon as possible, right? I want to take care of it, I want to protect it, but I got to go from A to B in an efficient manner. And when I drop it off, I'm not just dropping it off, I'm pushing it to the next person, the next queue. I'm not just leaving it in a bag and walking away, but I am documenting or doing a hard handoff to somebody saying, it's yours, I'm out. And we got to track everything. Technology has been really good to us. Getting into the RFID specimen tracking is awesome. It's also expensive. And if we are focusing on all these inefficiencies, right, we go back to that 30% waste. If you're looking to buy RFID and specimen tracking, you're going to need to figure out how you're going to get that money. And I just kind of pointed the finger at a lot of areas in which you could find the money, couldn't you? So if you really need help with the specimen tracking, that's a wonderful solution, but you're going to have to find the waste. And we know there's signature requirements for all tissue and other sensitive situations. We know this already. So it really does come down to that push philosophy. For the really sensitive materials, I have to physically hand it off to somebody and it's got to be recorded so that we can easily go back and look at, well, who had it last and when was it lost? Now, from a culture perspective, and this is huge, nobody wants to take and accept in healthcare that they were the one who caused the problem. The reason for that is because there's all this fear of losing your license or losing your job. In reality, we point the finger too quickly at people. Okay. So, my administrators on this right now are listening into this. I don't want you to focus on people. I want you to focus on process. I just shared with you how much more variation there is in healthcare. I need you to really understand and dissect that you're asking people to do some of the most complicated things, and you're not funding the right technology, the right training, the right support to even make it happen. And so you're introducing so much risk in your business. And then when a mistake does happen, you want to fire the person or write them up. That's incredibly unfair. We have got to find a way, instead of blaming people, showing empathy and forgiveness. Harvard shares with us that individuals with the most and highest emotional intelligence have mastered the art of forgiveness. Because in order to forgive somebody, we have to sympathize and empathize with them. We have to put ourselves in their shoes. We have to start thinking and understanding and giving people the benefit of the doubt that it was not their intent to be malicious. And only then will we understand what really truly is probably happening. And then we can make a better sense of judgment on what to do. Now, let's wrap this up with this slide. What happens when I solve these problems? I've taught and trained a lot of people, okay? Not enough, but a lot of people. And here's what I've found. The bigger the problem that you solve as an individual, especially if it's something that hasn't been solved, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get paid more. That is a fact. Our students who go through and get certified and our clients, those individuals who are truly solving the problems get more money. They also get promoted faster and to positions either within their organization or outside of their organization. But when they start solving these problems and they know how to solve it and they prove they know how to solve it, you bet they're in high demand. And a lot of our students go on to become the next leader in their organization. There is absolutely an improvement in your mental health. When you finally understand the art of taking back control and you understand how to solve these problems and you strengthen your emotional intelligence, you are happier. And that goes for your job here as well as any other circumstance outside of healthcare. And this is really cool. A lot of the problem solvers actually go on to become some of the coolest inventors. When I teach you how to do this, and you go through and you get certified and you understand how to solve these problems, that doesn't just turn off. You start thinking about other problems. You start thinking about the technology that should be invented. You start thinking about a new clinical approach, a new plan, something that's going to be related to the quality outcomes or improved service or cost reduction or whatever it is. And at some point, you're going to want to share that with the world. You're going to want to find partners. You're going to want to own your own business. I would be a liar if I were to tell you that this certification and being a master black belt didn't drive me to start this company. I know it works. It works incredibly well. I have tripled my pay because of this. Okay. It works very, very well, and it can work for you. I want to thank you all for your time. I know it's hard to get away and find the opportunity to be here, and I hope this was of value. I hope we can have a conversation. And more importantly, I hope we can help healthcare heal and make it better. And I'm hoping to do that by helping each of and every one of you individually where I can. I'll turn it back over to you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. Real quick, I'm going to go ahead and push that promotion offer today. We're offering 20% off for anybody live on the call using this promotion code for the yellow or green belt courses. Can you just maybe give us a quick 30 seconds about what folks can expect from that?
Yeah, sure thing. So we have right now, we've found that a lot of individuals would prefer to learn Lean Six Sigma at the comfort of their car or as they're out and about or trying to avoid the classroom setting. And so we created our online learning and a hybrid model. And when you go on right now, you can go to our website and you can purchase the yellow or the green belt if this is interesting. and you can get a 20% off of those purchases. And you'll find that you'll get a whole library of Lean Six Sigma specific to healthcare that focuses on cohesive value transformation, strengthening emotional intelligence, and helping yourself and your organization get better. So please take advantage of it if you're interested, and let us know what we can do to help you.
Yeah, thanks for that background, Jared. And again, if anybody wants to take advantage of that, you can hit that offer button that was just pushed across your screen. If you accidentally exit out, you can go back to handouts, offers, and you could follow the link there and use that code to receive a discount on those courses. With the last 10 minutes we have here, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Joe Kessler. Like I said up front, Joe is our Director of Recruiting and Staffing Services. He has over 10 years of experience in this industry, super knowledgeable, has helped hundreds of labs across the country, as well as candidates find great roles for themselves. And he's going to go ahead and just tell us a little bit more about this talent on demand offering, and there will be an opportunity afterwards to go ahead and apply to join that if you'd like to. So, Joe?
Hey, folks. Thanks, Alex, for the introduction. Really appreciate everyone's time today. I know that it's lunchtime and folks are maybe either enjoying some lunch while they're listening or getting hungry. So I'll be as brief as possible. But I wanted to tell you about something exciting today, which is Lighthouse's new recruiting product, what we're introducing as talent on demand. And I'll tell you a little bit before describing the product. I'll explain where this came from. So for many years, Lighthouse has been offering permanent placement recruiting as well as temporary staffing to labs across the country, as Alex mentioned. However, I think increasingly we are being approached by laboratory management and leaders who are looking for very specific, very niche expertise, help with particular projects in their labs. So say, for example, an audit of quality procedures or an upfit for particular instrumentation or even a review of billing and RCM practices. And whereas we would love to help those laboratories, oftentimes what they're looking for is either too short term or too part time to be a good fit for either our staffing or permanent recruiting models, which are really designed to help people find staff that are going to be employees of the lab over the indefinite term, or in some cases, if we're talking about staffing and temporary recruiting, maybe 3 months at a time on a full-time basis. And so if what the laboratory is looking for is really help on a particular project, we have in the past not been able to assist with that in terms of our ability to help through recruiting. Now, of course, Lighthouse does operate we work with many laboratories on a consulting basis. We can help with projects like that. But again, the situation often comes into play where if we aren't being assigned an entire project, or if what is needed is really specific and sort of quick in its delivery timelines, that's also hard for us to tackle in that way. So we came up with this talent on demand, which is an increasingly common feature of the labor market. You might see some of this referred to from time to time as fractional talent, meaning as needed, an immediate expertise for specific issues that you're having. And the way that Lighthouse does this is by providing access to top talent. So we've been building our internal database for over 20 years. If you've ever worked in a lab, there's a decent chance that your resume is somewhere in Lighthouse's network because we really strive to maintain the largest proprietary database out there of laboratory professionals, including consultants that specialize in this type of work. The kind of advantage to a laboratory engaging in something like this is really the ease of use. So you let us know, what is it that you're attempting to do in your lab? How much time do you think it's going to take? What's your ideal expert from a standpoint of, is this remote work? Is this on site? Is this project based? Is it a week that you need? Is it 4 weeks? You let us know what you need, and we work to pair you with the best available expert. And then we do the rest. We handle the contracts, the payment, the administration each month that allows you to focus fully on outcomes and not have to worry about, running things through your own legal department and getting contracts set up. And is this person W-2? Are they 1099? Are they temporary staff? Are they, all that goes out the window. You simply work with Lighthouse and we do everything on the administrative side. Not only that, but flexible pricing as well. So I mentioned earlier a little bit of an issue with the permanent placement recruiting and temporary staff recruiting models, which tend to be a lot of expense up front when we help you hire. Now, there's a lot of value there, but again, oftentimes it's not a match for the very this call it the smaller engagements. So we have flexible pricing in this scenario to meet your needs, either on a monthly basis where we assign a certain number of hours that you're able to use with our consultants and have that billed monthly to you, or even in certain instances on a project by project basis. We kind of endeavor to fill in the gaps there when the job is a little bit outside of the box for traditional staffing options. And then finally, kind of a risk-free approach. So our talent on demand allows you, first of all, to have full autonomy in selecting the experts that are the best for you. And that can be something as simple as a couple of phone calls, right? Hey, I need to pick the brain of somebody who's a true specialist in, say, a particular regulatory or compliance matter. We can help link you up with that. And then also the commitment here to just making sure that you are happy with the experts and the expertise that we provide. Talked earlier about flexibility in pricing. It is within our ability to switch out an expert if the first set of experts, for example, have done their part and now you need a different type of expertise under the same contract. If, say, we're billing monthly, we can make that swap and you can be able to transition to exactly the expertise that you need. So again, endeavoring to be as flexible, as specific as needed to provide a lot of value on a project by project basis. This is the way that we intend to do it. And we're really beginning kind of a soft launch today by talking about it, but you will see more materials to come. I know we've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to turn to the last slide and let you know that if you're interested in learning more, you can contact me directly. I have my email and phone number there, or you see the pop-up at the bottom of your screen. That pop-up is for consultants who may be on the call today and want to be considered for some of the opportunities that we have through this product. The application link is at the top. Just to be clear, the application, we don't turn anybody down. We are collecting your information. We want to know more about you. We'd love to see your resume, your bio, your experience, and to know more about the consulting expertise that you can provide, because we want to have folks available for consideration when these opportunities arise. So with that, I just want to turn things back over to Alex. Thank you for your time today. Thank our earlier presenters for a really interesting discussion on turnaround time, and wish everybody a great rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate you making that pitch and outlining that new service offering from us. Just a quick note to anybody, obviously that link is not live in this box, but if you download the slides, you'll be able to use that link to apply to Talent on Demand if you didn't catch the offer form that flashed across your screen. If you need any additional information, please reach out to us. And then I just also want to second Joe and say thank you again to Jared. That was an excellent presentation on improving your turnaround times and a lot of great food for thought there. So please, if you would like to follow up with Magnified Learning at all and didn't get a chance to do so, you can reach out to us directly and we'll connect you. But just want to say thanks again to everyone and enjoy the rest of your day.